You're listening to the Red Shed Tapes, and I'm your host, Shannon McMenamin. This episode is a Red Shed Tapes B-side, where we press play on stories and conversations from McMenamins' vault of recordings and interviews from the last 40-plus years. Like vinyl records, cassettes had a main side with all the hits, and a B-side where the jewels are buried. Our B-side is a little like that. Gems from the archive that aren't always at the top of the playlist, but if you're lucky enough to find, they're pure gold. When we started this podcast, it was, in part, because we have decades of history to share. What many people don't know is that, along the way, we documented that history, and much of our local communities with it. We've squirreled away interviews with historians, artists, musicians, friends, and co-conspirators. There are videos of McMenamins events and concerts. We've got audio from parties, parades, and historic moments. So when we decided to mark the 25th anniversary of McMenamins UFO Festival in McMinnville, Oregon, we knew it was time to dig into the archives. And the Red Shed Tapes B-side was born. Today and for the next 2 weeks on the podcast, we'll be sharing recordings from past UFO Fests at our Hotel Oregon. Now, if you know McMenamins for our pubs, breweries, and hotels, you may be wondering why we throw the second biggest annual UFO Fest in the U.S. It was by accident, really. More on that in a minute. If you're already paying attention to the world of UFOs, you're going to love the next 3 episodes. If you're a skeptic, these episodes will provide you with some pretty interesting bar talk. Grab a pint and settle in. So how did McMenamins, a company that began as one pub back in 1983, end up throwing a festival about UFOs? When my dad Mike and Uncle Brian started out, they knew they wanted to bring people together over beer and conversation. So the pub was the natural thing. Along the way, they realized that the conversation got a hell of a lot more interesting when people were surrounded by art and history to ignite ideas. So they hired artists and historians to outfit pubs and hotels in murals, paintings, and stories. Fast forward to 1999. My dad and Uncle Brian were restoring the Hotel Oregon in McMinnville. One thing we like to do when we join a local community is learn about the history of the area. So our company historian, Tim Hills, started researching the 1905 hotel.
I was up at the Yamhill County Historical Society in Lafayette looking through their vertical files. And there was a copy of the, I think, June 6th, 1950, front page of the McMinnville paper, and it has Paul Trent's 2 photos of the flying saucer that was hovering over his farm on May 11th, 1950.
Local resident Evelyn Trent had spotted something odd in the sky and called her husband Paul to bring the camera. UFO fever was running high in 1950. The story took off, Life magazine picked up the photos, and the unassuming Trents were briefly famous.
And it just happened in 2000 when all this information came up. It was the 50th anniversary of the Trent case. So we were like, we got to do something.
So Tim found Bruce Maccabee, a UFO researcher who had studied the Trent case, and invited him to Hotel Oregon to speak. We crossed our fingers that someone would show up. To our surprise, people came out in droves, filling the Paragon room and spilling out onto the sidewalk. So we did it again the next year, and the next. That was the year we added the UFO parade, and things really took off.
Like, that is an awesome costume right there. That's so bad.
Look it.
So here we are, 25 years later. The festival has grown as we partnered with the McMinnville community and added live music, a landing party, costume contests, street fair, and more. The party is cosmic. At its heart, though, are the speaker presentations. Experts travel from around the world to present their findings on ufology or tell stories of mysterious sightings and strange experiences. The festival topics and speakers over the years have been wide-ranging. We've heard from people who believe they have been abducted by aliens, scientists who study material evidence, and military personnel, among others. Over 3 episodes, you'll hear past UFO Fest speakers, representing a slice of what we've seen over 25 years. First up, a retired Navy flight commander who, with his crew, saw what they called a Tic Tac UFO. In next week's episode, you'll hear from an ET contact researcher who has spent years investigating her aunt and uncle's abduction. And we'll conclude the series with a Pulitzer Prize finalist who asked, what does the federal government really know about UFOs? So let's start with a trip to UFO Fest 2019. Top Gun Navy pilot David Fravor is recounting what he and his crew saw on a clear day in 2004 off the coast of San Diego.
The guy in the backseat of the other jet says, "Hey, skipper, do you," and I kind of finish the sentence, "Dude, do you see that?"
For years, UFO researchers and enthusiasts have reported evidence of UFOs and government cover-ups. But the press barely touched the subject. The government remained tight-lipped. And the general sentiment was that, sure, UFOs are pretty entertaining in Hollywood. But when U.S. Navy pilot Commander David Fravor came forward in 2017 to tell the New York Times about the Tic Tac UFO, the perception of UFOs began to change. He and other pilots recorded what they saw, and UFOs began to be taken seriously by more people, including people in government. So let's head back to UFO Fest 2019 when retired Commander David Fravor gave a rare public presentation about what he saw in the skies from his fighter jet. In this recording, you'll also hear broadcast journalist George Knapp and filmmaker Jeremy Corbell. Now here's David Fravor.
I enlisted in the Marine Corps at 17 years old for good reason. So anyone that knows me, my wife is out there probably laughing. So I did that. I was fortunate enough. They selected me. They sent me to college, to the Naval Academy, and I was fortunate enough to get to fly and had a great career. I was actually stationed up in Whidbey Island, Washington for 3 years, flying the A6 Intruder. So I'm dating myself, so I flew Intruders off the Ranger. The Ranger was sitting in Bremerton a few years ago, waiting to be turned into razor blades. So I did all that. So everyone that flies tactical airplanes in the Navy, which when I say tactical, I mean things that go off of aircraft carriers and come back on aircraft carriers, has a security clearance for obvious reasons. One is the systems itself that are on the airplane, and two are some of the things that we get to carry when we fly the airplanes. So everyone goes through that. And to get those, there's obviously, there's a lot of paperwork you got to fill out. And then there's investigations that go on. Like they do go around and they talk to your neighbors. And then you go through extensive training. And when I say training, it never stops. So for the entire 18 years I flew, you're in some type of training and you're always being evaluated. So every flight that we fly, we come back, we get debriefed. Every time we land on the boat, it gets graded and they come down and tell you if you were good, bad, indifferent. So you're always under that scrutiny, and we're always, if we're not being trained, we're always training someone else. So you think about it, we go through stuff, because I know there's going to be questions, and there has been a lot of, what was it? It could have been this, it could have been that. So we go through things, we get taught what other airplanes look like, we fly against other airplanes. I've flown against everything in the U.S. inventory except for the Raptor and other foreign stuff. So, I did 5 cruises to the Persian Gulf. So I spent a lot of time over there, a lot of time over Iraq, and a lot of time over Africa. So there's a lot that goes into this and all the stuff that we have to learn and train to as far as being professional observers, because if we're not in a shooting war, we're actually out there, things will try and come out towards the boat, and then we have to intercept them and help them go the other direction. So, we are professional observers. And at this point, when the incident happened, I had been flying for about 16 years, about 3,600 hours. I went to Top Gun, so I am one of those guys. I'll make a little joke. There are 2 things in the movie that are true. You guys know what they are? The one, there is a place called Top Gun. Number 2, they do fly airplanes there. Other than that...
Oh, and the sequel's coming, too.
It is. It actually is. It's called Maverick Top Gun 2. I just got a good rundown from a buddy of mine who's still in the Navy and actually met Tom Cruise. He was telling me the other day. But they are filming it. I don't know how it's going to be, because he's like almost a 40-year guy. He's a captain, which you'd have to retire in real life at 30. But that's a different story. Never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Except today. This will all be true. But that's kind of how it is. So.
Well, I was just saying, when I got tipped off about the Nimitz encounters, I reached out to a bunch of people. They all kind of pointed to you. Everybody spoke about you with reverence, that, this is a straight shooter. This is the guy not only with the closest and most direct and personal eyewitness experience of engaging the phenomenon, engaging this vehicle. Before we go there, just everybody referred to you as this credible individual who's a straight shooter. I don't think you realized how important to people, like people here around the world, your experience was. You kind of pushed me off, and I was like, dude, this is coming out. It's coming out big sometime. It might not be this year, but it'll be next. And that happened. It happened to you. Your face was plastered all around the media. George has done numerous news reports on your story. So I just want to know, as a human being, as somebody that everybody finds extremely credible, what is that like to go from anonymous individual, pretty much, to being plastered all over the global media? What does that feel like to someone like you?
So funny. So I got to fill in some gaps. So my friend Paco has a blog. It's called Fighter Sweep. I don't know, anyone out there read Fighter Sweep? He's the first one that wrote about this. That's how Jeremy found it. He bugged me and bugged me and bugged me. So one of the guys I used to fly with in A6s, we're all friends because Paco was A6 guy with me. So I was talking to this guy, Matt. Matt goes back, tells Paco. Paco calls me. And he's obsessed with it. He's like, really, I got to know about this. So I call him back one day, and I said, hey, what'd you need? And he goes, hang on, I'm putting you on speakerphone. I said, you're what? He says, I'm putting you on speakerphone. I said, why? He says, well, I'm having a dinner party. You got to tell the story. So I'm laughing, I tell a story. Then he starts bugging me, hey, he wants to write about it, he wants to write about it, he wants to write about it. I'm like, no. And like my kids, you pester long enough, I'll eventually give in just to shut you up. So I let him do it, and then next thing you know, he calls me up. He says, hey, there's a guy who wants to talk to you. And I'm actually kind of quiet, in my real life. I like to have my privacy. So he says, hey, will you talk to this guy? So I said, yeah, and that was Jeremy. And Jeremy and I have been talking for, about, longer than that. It's about 7 or 8 years we've been talking. So a significant amount of time that him and I have been going back and forth. And he kept saying, oh, this is going to be big. Hey, I want to do a story. I kept, no, just like Bob. I'm like, no. There was 4 of us, and we're going to get into it, but there was 4 of us that actually visually saw this thing for over 5 minutes, okay? So it's not, we'll talk about all the videos, and I'll give you guys all the specifics. So you'll be first-person hearsay, so you can go, I heard it from him, all right? So then you'll be credible. Not everyone is credible. Right, so I even forgot that.
Yeah, tell the story. What did you see that day?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we go out, and there's 4 of us that actually saw this thing. And you want me to do the story right now?
Do the story.
Yeah, let's jump in. How about let's jump in the deep water?
So here's actually what happened. So it was 2004. I had just taken over the squadron. I took over about October 16th. So when we get ready to go on cruise to go over to the Persian Gulf, we do what's called workups. And we were on a 2-month workup cycle off of San Diego. There's areas out there, you can pull up any aviation chart. They're big blue boxes, and they're called whiskey areas. They're not classified, they're not secret, anyone can go out there. All it is it's called a warning area, and it's an advisory to any other traffic or airplanes that want to go out there that there's a high concentration of military activity, because we train, okay? There's also things off the coast in certain areas called restricted areas, and those you cannot go in unless you're talking to someone. That's where we do tests, like off of Vandenberg when they're doing missile shoots and stuff, they activate the restricted areas so no airplanes are in there flying around. So we're in a warning area, it's off San Diego, they're out there right now, I can guarantee it right now, there's probably a ship out there and people are flying around doing stuff. And we were doing workups with the cruiser, which is the USS Princeton, which is an Aegis-class cruiser, which has one of the most sophisticated radar systems in the world. And we're going to go do it's called air defense. So the Marine Squadron, VMFA 232, they're going to be the bad guys. We call them Red Air. And me and my other airplane are going to be the good guys. We're the Blue Air. So they set up what's called CAP points. CAP stands for Combat Air Patrol, and it's where we're holding. So we go about 40 miles south of the ship, and the Marines are going to go about 100 miles south of the ship, and then they're going to act like bad guys and come at us, and we're going to intercept them. And we're going to help train the guys, not only us, but we're also training the guys on the cruiser that are doing the control. So we take off, the other airplane's joining up, and the USS Princeton calls me up. Call sign was probably Fast Eagle, because that's what we went by. They say, hey, Fast Eagle, this is so-and-so, USS Princeton. I'm like, all right, what do you need? And he goes, hey, what ordnance you got on board? And I started kind of laughing, and I said, well, I got a CATM 9, which if you look at any picture of a military airplane flying around in U.S. airspace, there's usually a missile hanging on the wingtip. They're usually blue. Blue means inert. It's actually just a big hollow tube. But the seeker head on it is real because that gives us feedback of if we're locking on. So when you watch Top Gun and they go, I got tone, that's the tone that's provided, okay? So I got this. He says, well, I said, well, with a hammer, you can get it off because you got to beat it off or you got to have the key to unlock it and take it off. So he says, well, hey, we're going to cancel training and we're going to go do a real world operation. So we're thinking, hey, off the coast of Mexico, real world operation, drug runners. Yeah, so we're like, oh, I'm in on that. So they give us a vector, which is a heading. So they say, hey, it's 270, and they give what's called a BRA call, which is bearing, range, and altitude. So they said, hey, it's 270 at like 60 miles, 20,000 feet. So we go out and we've got our radars looking, and the radar, it's a mechanically scanned radar, sorry, it's a habit. So the radar's doing this, and we're looking out and we're not seeing anything, and they're calling 40 miles, 30 miles, 20 miles, 10 miles. And we're just saying we're clean, which means we don't see anything, we're getting no indications of anything out there. So radars they're called resolution cells. So think of your camera, if you have like a really high megapixel camera, you can see real good details, and if you have a low megapixel, you can't see it. Think of those as resolution cells. So this is basically the radar going, I can't tell the difference between the blip that you were going after and you, because all we are to him is blips, right? So we keep moving. We have numbers bias because we're reporting back. So we get out there, he calls merge plot. So we're in the airplane, my wingman's off to the left-hand side, and when they call merge plot, we say it's doing the Stevie Wonder, so you start doing this. Because now it's somewhere around you, and they're not helping find it, because you're in the same room. So as we look off the right-hand side, and this is, I gotta caveat. This is a clear, no clouds, perfect Southern California day. Light wind, no white caps. Blue water, blue sky. If you have a sailboat, really nice. We did not. I was on a big gray boat. So we look down, we're looking around, and as I look off the right side, we see something that's causing the waves to break. So, got any sailors in here? So if you've ever been out at sea and you've seen a seamount that's submerged like 6 feet under the water, if anyone's been out to the coast and watched it, where you see the waves will break and you'll be like, why is that white water out there? There's a rock under there, the waves are coming up and breaking. So there's a lot of seamounts out off the coast of San Diego. So we start thinking, it's probably a seamount. And as we're looking down, now picture, the disturbance, the white water is kind of about the size of a 737 airplane. So think of a kind of a cross, like if you took a 737, pointed it to the east, and dropped it in. So if we're a clock, it's in the middle, pointing towards 3 o'clock. So as we look down, I'm kind of like looking at the white water going, what's that? And it draws our eyes onto the Tic Tac. So the guy in the back seat of the other airplane, because F-18Fs, these are Super Hornets, brand new too, right out of the factory. The guy, so we have a backseater. So the guy in the back seat of the other jet says, hey, Skipper, because that's what they call me. I go, hey, Skipper, do you? And I kind of finish the sentence, dude, do you see that? And we're watching this little white object, and it's oriented north-south, and it's going like this. And it doesn't, like a helicopter would do this. So the first thing we see it, what do you think? Helicopter, right? There's a white thing down there. So what do? When you see a helicopter, because I've seen them a gazillion times, there's rotor wash that comes off of them, right? And you'll start seeing the water. It kind of beats the water down below it, and you'll see there's no mist. It's just doing this. And it's kind of going up and down like the southern little thing that came off the object, and it goes up, and it goes left, goes right. But normally when a helicopter does that, it kind of goes like this, and then when it's trying to go the other way, it'll kind of slide a little bit because of inertia, and then it'll go back the other way. It doesn't do that. It goes real abrupt. So as we're kind of driving around the circle, we get over to about the 9 o'clock position. We're still at 20,000 feet. They're sitting over here. I said, I'm going to go check it out. And the other airplane said, I'm going to stay up here. I said, yeah, you stay up here. You take high cover. Just watch us. So now they can watch both me and the thing. I'm going to go down and see how close I can get this thing. So we keep going around. I start a nice, easy descent. Not necessarily cautious because of the object, but you can really lose how high you are over the water because it looks the same at 100 feet as it does at 10,000 feet. So you can, and I wouldn't be the first one to try and fly through it. Doesn't work. So I get to about the 12 o'clock position. The little object's still doing this, right? It's about 50 feet off the water. So this is important to note. The ship at the time, the radar, can't see it. Couldn't possibly see it because of the radar horizon. Because contrary to some people in California, the Earth is round. It is not surrounded by an ice wall. It's round, right? So when you get so far away, you can't see around it, all right? So we're far enough away. We're probably 60, 70 miles away from the cruiser. It's down here. We're up here. So we're descending, and we get to about the 12 o'clock, it goes, boop, just like this, and starts coming up.
Reacting to you.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I'm like, woo, all right. So we keep coming down, and it keeps coming up. And we go all the way around the circle until I get over to about the 8 o'clock position. By now, I'm probably around, estimate, this is a recall from almost 15 years ago, I'm probably about 15,000 feet. And the object is somewhere around probably 12,000 feet. So I'm getting closer. And it's about a mile across. So we're in a circle, we're just driving around. Everyone did that as kids, keep running around the circle. And you'll do it all day long until they tire themselves out. There's always that kid that cheats. So what do? Cut across the circle. So I go like this. I drop my nose. It's called an aggressive nose-low maneuver, and I go across. So I'm going, instead of around, I'm going around this way. And I'm thinking, so it's here, and I'm going to try and get over and get it. So I start pulling across the circle. It's coming up, gets in front of my nose. You see it start to accelerate, and it goes poof, and it's gone. So then you go, all right. I was kind of weirded out. I actually told my backseater, I go, woo. I asked the plane up above us, I said, hey, do you see it? And they said, no, it just disappeared. I'm like, okay. I'm a little bit weirded out. So we turn around. I said, well, let's turn around. Let's go see what was causing the water to turn white. So we turn around. So we're right there. It's not. It's gone. There's no white water, no Tic Tac, no nothing. So we turn back around, and the whole time we're talking to the cruiser, and I'll fill in some of the details here in a sec. So we turn around, and I'm like, well, because I'm the boss, okay, we got to go get some training, right? So let's go. So we start flying back to our cap point, which is about 60 miles away, and the controller comes up and says, sir, you're not going to believe this. I said, what? He said, that thing. It's at your cap point, just hanging out, 20,000 feet. So I'm like, okay. So we get up, we drive, we never see it. We never see it on radar. Never saw it on radar ever, only saw it visually. We do a couple intercepts. We come back to the Nimitz and land. Strangest day of my entire life, right? So we come back and land, and we have a thing called it's the parallel office where we store our flight gear. So we come inside, we're taking off the gear, and the four of us are talking about this. Like, oh my God, what was that? Well, another of my crews is getting ready to launch. And they're listening to us, and the backseater decided, hey, I'm gonna go try and find this thing. He knew where our cap points were at because we use them over and over for the training. And so he takes off. We have we're doing our debrief, trying to figure out what we just saw. He goes and flies. Hour and a half later, he comes back, and he had walked into intel because we have to go into intelligence and debrief. And the backseaters go do that, and they're like, hey, we saw this thing. We don't know what it was. They're like, great. And they're making fun of us, of course. And so when he walks in, they go, oh, VFA 41, see any UFOs? And the backseater goes, as a matter of fact, I did. And he drops the tape, which is the minute and 30-second video that you guys see. So kind of cool that we had the video, and then he brought it down to the ready room. And there's actually two tapes. There's a radar tape and then the targeting flare tape. The radar tape you guys have never seen, and no one probably will ever see it because we don't know where it's all at. And then the stuff that was taken off of a classified drive and put on YouTube and some other things. So, and that is a story. So besides catching a lot of stuff, and I'll let these guys, because I know they got some leading questions, but that's kind of what we saw. So it wasn't a fleeting thing. It wasn't a weather balloon. It was an object. I got a lot of experience. I looked at it for over 5 minutes, and I chased it. I got within a half mile of it. And it had no wings. It had no rotors. You can look in the video. It had no known propulsion system. There's no plume coming out. There's no heat signature, no nothing. And so we had talked to the cruiser while we're doing all this, and the young controller, and it's not the one that's public and talking all the time now, but it's probably a kid who was a second-class petty officer. It's a supervisor that keeps talking. He said, I said, well, what is this? He said, well, sir, we've been tracking these things, up to 10 of them, not 100, up to 10 of them, for the last 2 weeks. And this is the first time we had manned airplanes airborne when it showed up. I think whoever it was flying the thing probably got in trouble with their boss because they weren't supposed to be seen, and we saw them, but that's a different story. There's a lot of stuff, and I know these guys are asked questions about it, but there's a lot of stuff out there that we're going to talk about. But they had been coming down from above 80,000, come down, hang out at 20,000 for about 3 hours, and they go straight back up, right? So we just happened to be out there when one was there, and I'm sitting in front of you all here in McMinnville, Oregon, talking about it.
Did you? Who's the first person to call it a Tic Tac? And can you describe it a little bit more detail about what you saw?
You bet. It was probably all of us, because people are like, what did it look like? And I go, look like a Tic Tac. And then people go, what did it really look like? I go get a box of Tic Tacs, take one out, and go, make it 40 feet long. And he's seen Ghostbusters? It's a Twinkie, and it weighs 500 pounds. It's a Tic Tac, flies really fast, and it's about 40 feet long. And then they go, well, how do you know it's about 40 feet long? I go, I don't know. I've been flying for 16 years. I know about the size of a fighter. I know how close I got to it, and I know how big it looked. And I'm like, it's probably about 40 feet long. So there you go. But smooth, white. There's actually, you can't see it in the video that you guys, because it's been copied so many times. So we bring these things back. They're recorded on high 8, and the video is taken directly off the back of the feed to the displays that we see in the cockpit. And then we look at it on a big TV, right? Just normal TV. So it's just a high 8. We had 8 mil stuff. So we have the 2 tapes. We can look at them both synced up. We can do all kinds of cool things with it. But everyone seen the video? Do you guys know the right video? It's the boring one with no voices. It just sits in the middle of the screen. And a minute 30 later, it flies off the side. That's the video. Okay, so it starts black with a little white Tic Tac in the middle. Okay, that's infrared. So the differences in color are temperature. So the sky is black. The Tic Tac is white because it's hotter than the sky. So it's obviously got some heat to it. Which, when it switches to white with the little black Tic Tac in the middle, or gray, that's EO, that's TV. It's a black and white TV camera. Okay? What the Wizzo, that's the weapons systems operator in the back seat, was doing is he was going through all the modes that he had. So there's a narrow, medium, and wide field of view. So it starts in wide, and those little bars on the side of it are actually the tracking. You can go to, a little pitch here because I did it for him. You can go to the Stars and look at the video, and they actually have it highlighted, and it shows. I told them what all that stuff was, so they did a pretty good job. So if you miss me in this, go watch that, and you'll be able to tell. The little bars it's a passive track. It locks onto that object based on a pixel difference. So that's when you see it doing this. You know, little bars. Every time he changes, it has to relock, and he reacquires it. Because if he doesn't, the FLIR will actually it'll start to bore sight itself unless it's locked onto something. So he goes through the field of view, and the cool thing is that the narrow field of view in the IR mode is only the medium in the TV mode. So there's one more step forward in the TV mode, which is right before it flies off the screen is when he goes to that. That is the video. There's nothing being hidden. That's the whole thing. It's about 1 minute 30 seconds long, not 10. So.
I just want to get a little bit of clarification on the flight characteristics because, don't answer this right away, but are you sure what you saw wasn't a missile or some other high-tech test? So the way I would like to phrase that is the flight characteristics. One of the first times we talked way back in the day, you were explaining to me that it looked like a ping pong ball inside a glass of water, the way that it would boom, 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 edge to edge. So the flight characteristics of this vehicle you saw was intelligently controlled, and could it have been anything conventional based upon those flight characteristics, which you talked with Bob Azar last night a lot about?
Yep.
So please talk on that.
So we have this thing that kind of rules us. It's called physics. I know. The coyote never studied law, or it was Bugs Bunny. So the laws of physics. I'm probably dating myself because I watched Looney Tunes as a kid, or maybe I still do. So it's called inertia. When an object's moving one way, you have to overcome that force to go the other way. This thing kind of defied that. Now, granted, you could do stuff limited, but for air, because it's just like, people have boats, they do the same thing. They're not like cars where you can slam on the brakes. And cars have inertia. That's when you go skidding across the ice or, right before you impact that car because you were texting. That's inertia. ABS has failed. You're going into the bumper. This thing just defied all that. It was like left, right, forward, back, And then when it decided to come and visit, and mirror us, it just kind of abruptly went, boop, like that fast, just boom, and it started moving. So we have nothing that can literally just stop, twist, and it's going that fast. It doesn't do that, not in the air.
And the way it took off is another property of the propulsion that is unique, because you told me, Jeremy, I didn't see any flares, rotors, heat signatures, nothing. And when it took off, it was like,
That's
can
correct.
you explain that to everybody?
So let's just use something that's fast. So I've had airplanes, we do exercises where they're doing Mach 1.5. So you can see pretty far, you know, you can see 50, 60, 70, and actually when you get up at altitude, you can see hundreds of miles. If an airplane comes by, because I've watched SR-71s when NASA was flying them coming in from above 60,000 feet, they take off out of, NASA had a facility towards Palmdale, and they would fly this big loop. They go up towards Oregon, up here. They go up towards Washington, they do a big loop like Montana, Washington, they go back down south because it takes them that much to turn. You can watch them for a while. They're doing like Mach 3. This thing disappeared in about that much space in front of my nose, just went poof and was gone. So even if it was doing Mach 3, I'd have been able to go, there it goes. Not catching it, but I can still see it. This thing just literally disappeared. Poof. And from two different angles, because you gotta remember the other airplane is roughly 8,000 feet above me with a totally different angle on it and said the same thing. It got in front of your nose and it just disappeared.
So as an expert pilot, the propulsion this thing was utilizing without any signature that you have ever seen in other craft, this was a unique propulsion system.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was funny because
The leading question, just go tell them about it.
So, most people were here for Bob earlier. So when Jeremy did I saw this before it got released. He sent it to me, and I'm like, wow. I called him. I said, well, that pretty much describes what I saw. You know, so now you get in to go, where'd it come from? I don't know. Go ahead.
If not for the thing in the water, you may not have seen it. So
That's correct.
what was in the water? It wasn't a rock, because when you went back, it was gone. So what was it?
I have no idea. I know it was a disturbance. There was something below the surface that was causing the waves to break on top. When we went back, we could not find it at all.
And this thing, a rendezvous, a docking, you're speculating, obviously, but I mean,
Oh, very much.
There's a relationship between the Tic Tac and what was under the water.
I think so. As I told Good Morning America, they asked me, and I said, well, maybe it was communicating with the whales like Star Trek. And they actually put that on their broadcast. So I don't know what was down there. I don't know if it was actually communicating, but if you want to speculate that's how we find it. We would have never seen, because it's not that, you think, God, it's 40 feet long and it's a white Tic Tac. You'd be amazed at things that you don't see, because our eyes are cued to motion. So if it was just sitting still, there's probably a really good chance we'd have never seen it. But as it was doing this, that motion tracks. You ever watch, you guys have rabbits, get coyotes around here? When the first thing the rabbit does when the coyote shows up is sits there and doesn't move, because the coyotes actually track the motion. If the rabbit runs, the coyote's locked in. They wait till the coyote gets closer and then they run. But sometimes they'll sit there and the animals will move on. So it's kind of that, as we're watching it, we're trying to get cued in, and when it's moving, you go, and literally, so you see the disturbance and you see this bright white thing moving around, you go, what the is that?
I have two kind of technical questions for you. So one of the parts of your case that's so astounding is the object was about 60 miles out at your cap point, as you described. How did it know within 120 seconds? How did that vehicle know? Was there an encrypted communication that maybe it siphoned off? Some people speculated they can read our minds. How did this object that is piloted by an intelligence, it's an anomalous aerial vehicle, how did it know to be at your cap point when you had an encrypted communication?
Was it messing with you by going there? No?
Maybe it wanted to meet me. No, it's, I don't know, because you'd say read my mind, and I'd say you're not going to get much. And I don't memorize the coordinates. They get loaded up on a system, and we have a card that we slam into the airplane, and it downloads everything. So I don't memorize that stuff. I just go, I know it's waypoint number 1, and I select it, and it pops up on a screen. I go, that's it. So how do they know that was it? I have no idea. If this is what we think it is, and you're all here, then it obviously is very advanced, whatever it was. I'm thinking if they can figure out a propulsion system that allows it to do that stuff, then maybe they can figure out a lot of other things. We don't broadcast, the points are in the airplane. They're not going out over the waves. Some of it does, because we have a link that the airplanes can talk to each other, and we can see what the ship sees.
So let's talk about technology real quick. One last point, the technology of this. So you're alluding to the idea of which a lot of the scientists that worked on the papers, they believe it's probably gravity propelled, as Lazar said yesterday, and you guys were talking. That's the only thing that can distort and move things with the inertia factor like that. So you have something that's technologically advanced that somehow knew your cap point at the moment almost that you're going to there, that you're sent to there, but also something else happened, and you explained this to me eloquently, and I want to understand the difference of a technological machine that can passively jam or actively jam. This object actively jammed our craft. Can you explain to the audience what passive jamming is, active jamming, and why that's so important that this technological capability was there for this machine?
So we'll just talk jamming in general. So what happens, our radars, they're pretty smart. Probably smarter than I am. I always joke they're designed by a bunch of kids who got beat up in school. It's kind of funny, but they are. These guys that do this stuff are brilliant. For those, just in simple terms, it's a Doppler radar. It sends out a signal. The signal hits something, it comes back. There's limitations to that. Nothing's perfect. They're not all seeing, all knowing. And we learn all that stuff, but it's not important. So when they first saw it, the crew that took the video, the first thing they do, they're flying around. They have two screens up. They have their radar on the right, which is azimuth and distance. So it says it doesn't see all the way around, like you see in some, like Top Gun, I think has a thing, it keeps going around, he's tapping the scope. No, airplanes can't see all the way around, they can see in front. So it's doing this. And then it has another display on the left that is azimuth, so left and right, and up and down. So if you had two things that were stacked, we could see there's a guy high and a guy low. And on this one, they would look like they're on top of each other. Does that make sense to everyone? So between the two displays, you get a 3D picture. Okay? So what he saw when he first gets it is they're flying out there, and you can look at the video. They're actually about 20,000 feet with the autopilot on, just with the auto throttles on, so the airplanes, they're just driving around. And he sees it, and he's in the back seat. So the back seater in a Super Hornet cannot fly it, right? There's no stick. There's actually a nub, because we can convert it into a trainer. But they have side sticks, so there's no throttle quadrant back there. So they're sitting like this. It's kind of comfortable. And they can do everything with their hands. It's called HOTAS. They just sit there with their hands on these two little joysticks, and they can change displays. They can do all kinds of really cool stuff. And it's decoupled from the front cockpit. So these were the first Block 2 Super Hornets that went to the fleet. So like I said, we were literally getting them right out of the factory from Boeing. So he goes to lock the radar, and what happens when the radar starts picking up indications that it's being jammed, so what happens is your signal goes out, and then something manipulates the signal and sends it back to you, right? And there's a bunch of different forms. If there's any radar engineers in here, raise your hand and you can explain this afterwards. But it sends a signal back, and it says, I'm being jammed. And it gives us indications in the cockpit. It'll put big strobes up, and it does all kinds of things. And it's pretty obvious when it happens. You go, I'm being jammed. Jamming by something other than us playing with ourselves is technically an act of war, just so you know. So this thing jams, and what he does, because he sees it being jammed right away, he can castle real quick and go from that azimuth altitude, we call it AZL, he can immediately go to his targeting flare. So that's what he does. He castles over, he gets the targeting flare, and then he takes the passive track, because obviously your radar is not working and not going to work. So that's the tape that no one has seen. I have a lot. And this is one of those things, like everyone knows where they're at. I hate to say it, but 9/11, if you were alive back then, you know exactly what you're doing on that day. This is one of those days for me. I mean, I know exactly what was going on. It's very clear, because it's like one of the weirdest things you're ever going to happen to you. So when you see that, and it's jamming, that's when he gets the passive track, and that's the minute and 30 seconds that you see.
What tape did you see that nobody's seen?
The radar tape. The radar tape off of the airplane that took the video.
A lot of claims have been made since your story came out, since the New York Times broke it, additional press coverage, and different witnesses have come forward who say that they were on the ship, they saw it with their eyes, they saw it on radar, they were there, they're part of it, and I want to, without naming names, address some of the claims that you have seen and heard because you were there.
So there are 4 of us. 4 that physically saw this thing. 4. 2 of us have talked in the New York Times article. One of them is going to be in a show that comes out on the 31st called Unidentified. That person remains 2 of them, they're still on active duty, and they don't want to come forward. My backseater does not come forward at all, okay? The guy that talked in the New York Times with me doesn't talk anymore. And like I said, this is probably my first and last public appearance. So there were 4 of us that saw it. The 2 people that were in the airplane that took the video did not physically see it with their eyes, but they got the video, okay? So if anyone that was on the ship is an eyewitness, then there's 5,500 people on the USS Nimitz that are eyewitnesses to this, because I will guarantee you 30 minutes after it happened and we got back on board that ship, the entire ship knew that it happened, okay? The movies changed to Men in Black, Signs, Independence Day. We have comics. I have an airplane comic that it's usually based on The Far Side, and it's our ship schedule. For 2 days in a row it was that, and for 2 days they played alien movies. Mars Attacks is one of our favorites, by the way. So I always carry Slim with me, just in case. I shouldn't make jokes, but that's how I am. And then you had the cruiser. There's about 400 people on the cruiser. There were people in the radar room. There was the controller that was actually talking. So you ask, what's that guy really seeing? He's got a round scope in front of him, right? And unlike TV where the strobe goes around, you see the sweep goes around. Aegis cruisers don't have that. They're phased array, right? So they're just, and they don't scan normal. They kind of do this, right? It's very, very fast. So they scan high volumes of the airspace really, really fast. It's an amazing system. So you get little numbers next to blips. They can put their cursors over them and it'll give data. So it's a 3D radar, so it'll give range, altitude, and bearing. So that's 3D. And you can go, that thing's out at 75 miles at 220 at 30,000 feet, okay? So, and then they also have the ability to see like azimuth elevation of things coming down, but you gotta be looking at that. So the actual controller is seeing stuff when he's talking to us, it's at 20,000, and as the radar updates or loses track, he doesn't know. So when we go merge plot, and he loses it, because he can't see it anymore, because our blip is on top of that blip, that's kind of it. So they tracked up to, I wanna caveat this, 10, not 100, 10 is the max they told us they saw. Now, if it's different than that, I was never told. The other rumors that come out is, you guys signed non-disclosures. Never happened. It was classified. Never happened. Men in suits showed up. We're gonna get that one later, okay? So, when this thing broke, back to Jeremy's original question that I messed up, is how was it when this thing hit? So I can tell you right now, I completely underestimated the power of a New York Times article. I will admit that. The lady that wrote it, Helene Cooper, called me on Thursday after it hit the airways on Saturday at 2 o'clock and said, "How you doing?" I said, "Wow." My phone is nonstop ringing. And people can find where you live. It helped them that the guy put that I live in Windham, New Hampshire below the caption on the picture of the New York Times, which didn't make me happy, but that's a different story. So, what all comes out of this as far as the rumors of the New York Times article is very well. I got to read it before they put it in the paper. The Washington Post is really good. And I have talked to a total of, now that I just talked to George, I've talked to, get this, 20 people total. 20. That's it. So it was over 300 publications. It's been on hundreds of news things. I have talked to 20. So for your reference out there, if you want to research this, New York Times, Washington Post, London Sun-Times, Tucker Carlson, Aaron Burnett, Waters World, another CNN one. Jeremy I've talked to a lot. He's got some stuff on his website, because we kind of go through this, excuse my language and some of that, because I'm driving in my truck home from work, and he'll start asking me questions, and it kind of pisses me off when people start making stuff up. So that's really it's really the truth, and we're going to get to questions here in a minute, and you can ask them all you want. But the story has been the same for 15 years. When it hit the airways, first guy to call me is about 2:15 on Saturday. It goes on the air at 2 o'clock. So when it hits the internet, he's like, I answer the phone, he goes, "You're an idiot." I said, "What?" He goes, "I'm trying to eat lunch and you're on my iPad. What did you do?" I said, I got asked to do this by Lou Elizondo, who ran ATIP program at the Pentagon. And he goes, oh, all right. And then it started. And it's been it kind of does this. It dies off, and then the Navy releases that they're changing the reporting procedures, and it goes up, and then this TV thing, it's,
I guess you're being diplomatic, but some of the stories and claims that have been made by people who may have been on those ships are just bullshit.
Okay, so we'll hit it. So these two were at a festival, and he sends me a picture of the manual, and it's got a thing by who has seen Nimitz Encounters? Stick your hands up. It's like a cartoon depiction, shows the airplanes flying around. It should not be on the internet anymore because I had him take it down. That guy was there. There were some other guys there that I guess they now have PTSD from this. Okay, so I don't have PTSD. I saw it. I got looked at by the lady who wrote the New York Times and said, when I said, I'm going to go check it out, she's like, you what? She goes, I'd have left. I said, no, I wanted to see how close I could get. She said, what if you just saw like an alien inside? I said, I don't know, I would have waved. What are you going to do? Our story, and the four of us that physically saw it, have the exact same story and has not changed in the last 15 years.
Can you speak to any additional information or realizations that might have come from the unseen radar footage? So can you tell us anything more that you haven't told? Yeah.
So the biggest thing is I took the original tapes and I copied them and they go in the safe. And then we came back, we went on cruise, that stuff goes back and forth. Somewhere between now and this thing breaking, those tapes just vanished. Most likely someone opened up, found two 8mm tapes and said, hey, we can reuse these things, slapped stickers on them and slammed them in an airplane and taped over whatever we had. The radar tapes from the USS Princeton, those were supposed to be pulled and archived. There's rumors that, they pulled into port and some guys in suits came and took it off. I will say this, I'm doubtful. I'm skeptical. I could probably track down the CO, who I know, and ask him, because if anyone's going to come on board the boat and take something off that ship, captain has to approve it, okay? So watch what you read on the internet. I gave you some very reliable sources. There are some people that say there are witnesses of this that I will not be associated with. I'll just say that.
Somehow that video appeared online, 2007, 2008, the clip. It was on, someone stole it.
Yes.
Someone stole it from the U.S. Navy.
Off a classified server.
So when we come back, the tapes go in, and we have this giant rack of things, and they tape it all into a giant hard drive in Civic. And that's the stuff that gets dispersed out and goes to a network that we have. It's encrypted and classified for good reason, that we don't want everyone reading everything that we do. It's not a conspiracy theory, it's just how we do business. So when it first got sent to me, the guy that sent it to me was a guy in my back seat. I get this email with a link that says, hey, Skipper, look familiar? It was on a site called strangeland.com. Don't go there at work. NSFW. So I get it, and then it showed up on YouTube, and it was on YouTube for years. And I would tell the story, and people go, really? I go, yeah, there's a video. And I had the link, and I would forward the link out. And then the link disappeared when the unofficial official report was done, which some of you have probably read the redacted version of. So.
Well, about that, I released it last year. It was redacted. It was a 12 or 13-page report, an analysis that was done years later that looked at multiple sensor systems. That was a legit, unofficial official report, but legit, right?
Very. Oh, yeah. I know the guy that did it. It is a very credible report.
Are there any other sensors that picked up information that could?
No, because someone in the audience asked me, did it pick? There was no ESM. They weren't getting ESM cuts off of it, which is if something's out there minimum, we have passive things that will pick it up so you can see what's out there. We have it on the airplane too. It's called radar warning receiver, so you can tell if threat systems are looking at you. It tells you, it identifies them in layman's terms. But no, we got no passive cuts. The only thing we got was the radar hit from the airplane. Obviously, the E2s, looks like a little mini AWACS plane that flies off the carrier. They could see it. The carrier could see it. The cruiser could see it. It's just airplanes, we're limited. And depending on the frequency range that the radar operates in can make it easier or harder to see an object like that. So I'm going to assume that where we operate was a little bit harder to see, then they can change. They have different spectrum that they can operate in. which allows them to see stuff that we can't.
So the argument's been made that because that video clip was on some social media site years ago, it's not official. It was manufactured. It wasn't released by the Pentagon years later. Your thoughts on that?
Oh no, the video that's out there, that's 1 minute 30 seconds that the Pentagon authorized release, and now it's everywhere, that is real. That is not a joke. That is not doctored with. I literally watched that video like probably within 15 minutes of that airplane landing. I had it, they were mine, because when you're the boss, you get to do that. So I copied them because those are things that I have to buy because I have a limited budget because it's your tax dollars. And I was pretty frugal with them. So I took 2 new tapes, I copied them, so we had it. So then, because the backseaters have tapes assigned to them, and they use them over and over and over, and then if there's something pertinent, we copy it, and then they keep going. So it was copied, and then it was obviously digitized, because it's an analog, it's not digital tape. The new stuff, I think, is digital. But at the time, we had high 8, just normal, same thing, I'll say camcorders, but no one has those anymore, but camcorders were out there, so yeah.
So there are famously 3 officially released Pentagon verified videos. Your video, the Tic Tac video, the one from your command, the gimbal video where we see the craft that looks just like Lazar described in that movement, and then the Go Fast video. Now, the talk about those, I want to hear the pilots that filmed the gimbal, the pilots that filmed the Go Fast, it's been publicly said already, so the cubes with circular auras, that's public. So those things that we've talked about or heard about online, tell me about the pilots, tell me about the, people like to argue the gimbal is an airplane that is just turning or banking and the heat signature is of something prosaic. Can you talk about those other vehicles or crafts and from other pilots and what you see in those videos?
Yeah, let's start with the gimbal video. That's the one where the guys are talking and it starts to rotate. It looks like a kind of a saucer with the thing sticking out top and bottom, does this. Okay, so I talked to one of the crews that was out there doing that was out there when the video was shot. If you understand what you're looking at, it's because people are like, it could be an airplane. No, it couldn't be. If you actually, and there's debunkers that say, it's this, it's not. Usually when an airplane rolls this point, there's this thing that keeps us flying, their wings, and wings create lift. When you go like this, there is no lift. If you don't pull, it does this, right? So really, in theory, like a 90-degree angle of bank, who's seen the Blue Angels or the Thunderbirds when they do, they're really not totally at 90. They use a little rudder and they can do some things to keep the airplane as it flies by, their knife edge pass. But truly at 0 degrees or 90 degrees angle of bank, there is 0 lift being created and the airplane will start to descend. The airplane, it just sits there. So if it does, it has to put G on and then you're gonna see an aspect change like this. So if it's this way, you're gonna see this or you're gonna see this. In that video, you don't see any change. It just sits there. And it rolls around like this. It doesn't move. You get no aspect change at all.
It's not an airplane that we know.
No, actually, they almost hit one. There's a couple things I see. This is all off Virginia, by the way. It's the vacapes. So there's whiskey areas out there, too. That's where NAS Oceana goes out and trains. So there's a couple things. They've tracked them at just sitting there. They've tracked them at high rates of speed. They've been tracked lots. The radars they're using now are even better than the ones that I had in the Super Hornet. It's pretty amazing. So more advanced technology, cooler stuff, more capable. They're seeing it. At first they thought when they first saw it, they thought, these are just ghost hits. And I'm like, no, that radar really doesn't provide ghost hits, which are false targets. It's pretty good. And then someone actually threw their targeting pod out there and there was something there because you can't hide from the targeting pod if you've got any type of heat signature. And that's what really started this. But they've been seen by many people as far as on the radar. And there's been a couple that have seen visual because one guy almost hit one. It was just sitting there.
This is recent. This is real recent.
This is within the last 5 years.
Did they describe these things as conventional aircraft, or how did they describe these things they almost hit, Dave?
They describe it as, well, the one that almost got hit was like a clear beach ball sphere with a cube inside, so the little apexes of each corner hit the cube. So I don't know if it's like is it a beach ball or is it like a force field? I don't know. There's something around it. This is kind of what's prompting, I think they're getting heat from other avenues of the government because of what happened with our incident that, hindsight being 20/20, which is how I live my life. Yeah. Probably should have done something about it. Maybe put a little effort into this. If not to go figure out what can come in and penetrate a battle group like that, but God, just what if we can harness that technology? What if you can reverse engineer that technology? Very much what Bob was talking about, to go, can we do this? Because a technology that would do that would change everything we do. I work with a guy, he's a friend of mine that was like employee number 11 at SpaceX. He's not there anymore. And I go, hey, and they're happy. I go, you guys are all happy you can land that little rocket pack on the pad and reuse it? And they go, yeah. I go, if you had one of these things, that's all obsolete. All of it. So the other question is, can a human body withstand those forces? That remains to be, something that accelerates. There's people would say no. But then you go, well, what if you could? Or you just start the acceleration a little slower, and the deceleration. So.
Your conversation last night with Lazar was a little bit about the idea of the gravity insulation, that something could move with that kind of inertia. Even the physical matter of the craft itself probably couldn't withstand a ping pong ball like hitting against the wall and coming back that fast, right? So there's something going on with these propulsion systems that's outside of our scope.
Oh, yeah, but when you had to see the look on our face after we saw it. So you watch something like that and you go, whoa, and then you watch it, you come up from, it's hard enough to just be hanging out down low and then just start climbing up at will. It takes a while to get the, normally if we're going that slow, like if we could hover, we can't. Then if you ever anyone seen a Harrier demo, the Marines, where it kind of sits there when they start to take off, it kind of takes it a minute and it kind of does this and then it starts to accelerate up. That's a lot of energy. Those airplanes are light loaded. They don't have a full combat load. So there's a lot going on. So when you look at something that can just, I'm going to come up and check you out, you go, I'm impressed. Matter of fact, I came back and my XO looks at me and he goes, we're standing there, and he says, that's my number 2 guy. I was the number 1 guy. So if you watch Dr. Evil, I was number 1. He was number 2, then he became number 1. So he looks at me and he says, hey, what do you think that was? And I go, I don't know, but I want to fly it. It was pretty cool.
let me ask you about that, what you think it was too, because we in private we can talk about it, and we know you're speculating, but just your opinion matters to me, it matters to the audience. Is this something that humans could have created, this craft you saw?
So if you'd asked me in 2004, I probably would have went, I don't know. You don't know what they're doing. And I don't ask, because I really don't care. But I would go, well, keeping something like that, a technology that advanced, hidden for 15 years, I listen to Bob's questions, and I totally agree with what he's saying, but you can keep secrets, but eventually they leak out. And I'll just use the 117. Before, the 117 was around for years before it was acknowledged. And then there was pictures of it in Germany, those little grainy shots. And then the Air Force came out and acknowledged that we had this thing, and they started using it more. So you can hide stuff for a period of time, but eventually the rumors are going to come out that you're going to start to see something like this. And after 15 years, we're still pumping diesel fuel and jet engines and sucking air in and blowing it out the back to make us go. And I'd go, man, if you have this, self-driving cars, Tesla, because you don't have to go like super fast. If you have something that manipulates that, you could just cruise all around. You have this little reactor in your car, and you just, no output. Everyone wants a Green New Deal. Well, that was sarcasm. No one throw rocks at me. I know I'm up here. But for something like this, no one's going to pay. Well, I live in New Hampshire. Let's use $4 a gallon for gas because you live in California. No one would have to get their own gas pumped here because you wouldn't need it. So it would change. It would literally, think about it. It would change the world for mankind.
2007, Harry Reid, working with some folks at the DIA, gets interested in this subject enough to where he initiates a program. He gets some other senators on board. They have a program, some funding, and for a couple of years at least, there was research into this and on a wider version of topics. A friend of yours, Lou Elizondo, had his own slice of a study, ATIP, looking at nuts and bolts flying saucers encounters with military units, and then it sort of went away. We have reported, and we have read in other news reports, that Congress is now interested, that the congressional staffers closed-door briefings with pilots, with witnesses, and that now elected members of Congress are looking at it without crossing a line or violating confidence. Can you speak about that in general terms, or say whatever you know about what that process is and where it might lead?
Yeah, I will. This is a secret. That's a joke. Yes, that is true. I have been asked, I have went to Washington, and I have talked to people. I will not get into specifics of who I talked to because that is between me and them. There is an interest in this at very high levels. I think you're seeing that with what 2 weeks ago the Navy came out and said they're changing their reporting procedures. I'm not going to post on Facebook that my job is done and I've been successful. That's sarcasm to someone else. But there are people, I know for a fact there were 2 of us that went and talked to people, and we've done it multiple times, different people. So yes, this is going on. Yes, there are people that think this is very important to look at. They think that it's worth the money. I personally laugh. You know, it was Senator Reid got $22 million over 4 years, right? Or 5 years. 5 years. Just $4.4 million a year. Have you guys seen the defense budget this year? Over $700 billion. That's like me tossing you a penny. That's about what it is in that budget, because I'm not rich, so penny's a lot. But it's in the rounding error, and people freak out that, oh my God, you spent $4.4 million a year at the Pentagon doing ATIP. And I go, I applaud them. $4.4 million, you probably got a lot, you probably got your money's worth. And the fact that it ran for what, 5 years, it was over supposedly in 2012. I talked to Lou in like 2016. He was still at the Pentagon. You do the math.
So you're
and
saying,
we were talking about
saying
this.
the program hasn't ended.
I would say, I don't know. I won't speculate on what the government does. I'll say this. Having been a lot of time, most of my adult life in the military, we never stop doing anything until someone physically tells us to stop. Never worried about budget, never worried about anything. They tell you to do it, you do it. You find a way to get it done. So Lou is very much like I am. He's got a very interesting background for what he's been able to do. He calls it like it is. I'll speak for him. He'll probably yell at me, but I'm speaking for him because we've had this. You know, he talks about this, why he left his job, because I asked him when he left, and it was, he felt that the political appointees between him and the Secretary Mattis, or as I know him, General, he was actually my senior Marine when I was enlisted. He felt that it was being filtered, so the word wasn't getting up to the Secretary to make the appropriate decisions, and sometimes the best way to speak is with your feet. And he left. And now you'll see him on TV on the 31st at 10 o'clock on History Channel. That's a pitch. Yeah, I think it's important. What do you got to lose? Would you guys spend $22 million over 5 years to maybe find something that you would change the way we do life?
What do you mean by that? What could happen if we could understand this technology that you observed?
Well, let's just start with transportation. That would pretty much change. Because if you can do, now take what I'm talking about, what I saw, because when I saw the Bob Lazar movie that Jeremy did, and this, a lot of footage that George shot, when I watch it, there's 2 things that come to me, all right? First of all is when he talks about the propulsion system and how these things would move, I'm like, well, that would make total sense. Because you saw in there where he describes, put a bowling ball in the middle of the bed, just sits there, push on the side of the bed, create a void, the bowling ball moves. You look at that, you go, well, that makes a lot of sense. The second thing that I would say that really caught me, and I called Jeremy on this, is because there's a lot of non-believers, and I won't get into my own personal beliefs on everything, but like me, one, he doesn't like talking, and number 2, he's not making anything on it. So what's your motivation? Just ask yourself that. What's the motivation? And really, besides the fact, and you can get he can speak for himself on why, and I know he was up here talking about it, but asked that. Those are the two things that hit me the first. I'm like, God, I called Jeremy. I said, man, he sounds just like I am when I talk about this. It was just like kind of, it is what it is. Here's what I saw. He doesn't try and embellish. Like, oh yeah, I was in there. I saw the alien bodies. They were actually propping them up in the seats. They were moving them like puppets. No. Or, hey, they were walking around getting me coffee. He doesn't do that. He flat out tells you, no, I didn't see that. I read documents, but I don't know if they're real. But he tells you exactly what he knew. So I'm not telling you exactly, I'll tell you what I'm skeptical on, but and because I talked to the guys on the Princeton, and the CO after that was a good friend of mine. So I kind of got that, and the fact that, because we'll get to the men in suits thing right now. So that's the other one, men in suits showed up. So between us, there's about 6,000 people between the two ships. Of all of them, I was about in the top 20.
In terms of rank.
Yeah, and responsibility. So I would think that if someone's going to show up in suits to discuss this and tell us not to talk, and I'm the guy that chased it, then I'm probably the first person they're going to come and talk to. Call me egotistical, but I'm just saying they're probably going to do that. And it never happened. Ever.
No one signed an NDA that you know of, or was asked to sign an NDA that you know of.
No, it's funny though, people thought we did. Like a good friend of mine who used to work for me, who gave me the airplane comic that he saved for all these years in the New York Times, he's like, dude, I knew this would come back. He goes, you guys signed an NDA? I wrote him back, I'm like, no, we didn't. Like, I'm telling you, when this hit, my friends, I had a buddy of mine, he was on safari in Tanzania. And I start getting text, dude, I'm on safari in Tanzania and you were all over my phone. And I like to quote it up as, so I got this bucket list, trend on Google, check. Twitter, check. And I don't even have a Twitter account, but there's a hashtag David Fravor. Yeah, it was, so all the people that came out are like, dude, I remember you telling me that story. We were sitting in a bar, because that's usually where you find me. Really, I'm not that bad. My wife's probably rolling her eyes right now. But no, it wasn't a shock. But here's the funny story. You guys will like this. So my mother-in-law, when we first started dating, we actually went to high school prom together. So we've been together, we have our 30-year anniversary in June.
His wife, his mother, he's telling a story about
Yeah.
his mother-in-law.
Yeah. No. I married my mother-in-law's daughter.
There we go.
Okay?
Let's be clear.
Does that make sense? So yeah. So I first met her. I used to always joke with my wife, we were dating at the time, because her mom always had like the National Enquirer and all that stuff. Men in Black, the hot sheets. It's the best information. So she would ask me all this. So when I started flying for the Navy, she'd be like, you ever seen UFOs? No. You ever seen UFOs? No. And this went on for years. And then it stopped. She probably shouldn't have stopped asking. So the incident happens in 2004, and she hasn't asked me. And I don't tell anyone. I mean, I barely gave the whole detailed story to my wife and kids. So November 2017, Thanksgiving. I know the New York Times article's coming out. I'm gonna have to divulge. So we're all sitting there, and everyone leaves, like my brother-in-law, and so it's just my wife and I, and I think my son was with us, and my mother-in-law and father-in-law, and we're sitting around the little table, and I go, hey, you remember when you used to ask me about UFOs? And she just kind of looks at me, because my father-in-law would always be one of these, Sue, really? You got to ask him all that stuff? So I go, well, there's going to be this article that comes out in the New York Times because I chased a UFO. And she immediately goes, I told you. So, true story. True story. So, I'll just tell you, because this is my third 15 minutes of fame. You don't want one. 2's bad. 3 is no. And I would never want to be a Hollywood movie star, ever.
He still thinks this is going away. Every month he tells me, aren't people sick of this? I've told my story. Can we talk about something else? And it's not going to go away. Part of what Bob has had to do over 30 years with George is to untwist the fabrications and the lies from a very simple, straightforward story in a lot of ways. Same with Commander Fravor. I want to thank Dave for coming to talk with you for the first and only time, as he said. Thank you so much, Dave, for coming here. And I just want to give a kind of final thoughts to George as well, pass it over to him. My kind of final thought here is one of the first times I really broke the sound barrier with you about what you think you saw. I would love for today for people to see this around the world and people saying, oh, it could be this, it could be that. No, here's Commander David Fravor sitting right here. He told you his story direct, what he saw as a trained observer and one of the top badass fighter pilots on our planet, what he engaged. So if you deny that information, that's your problem, not ours anymore. He has spoken now. So what I'd just like to say is, when I asked you and we broke that sound barrier of what we're really talking about here, you said to me after a long, uncomfortable pause, Jeremy, have you ever watched Independence Day? Well, I have with my kids. Because I asked you, what do you tell your kids about this? You saw a technology so far advanced, it's inconceivable that it's something created, as far as we understand, by human technology. It appears to be distorting gravity, time, space. This thing is bouncing around like a ping pong ball. You chased it. How does that affect you? How does it affect speaking with your wife? How does it affect with your kids? How has it affected you as a human, how you look at yourself on this earth, man?
My kids are extremely sarcastic. And both very smart. And their mom raised them well. So when they're together, I get brutalized. I walked in the door after doing Tucker Carlson, and I didn't get one foot in the door, and the memes were flying, and the jokes were coming, because I am sober and believable. How does it affect me? I don't know. I'm the same guy that I was growing up in Toledo, Ohio. People that know me are going, yeah, you're the same guy. Kind of a smart aleck. That's a nice way of saying it. I say my kids got it from their mother, but she says, not so fast. Out of all of it, I've met some really cool people. I've gotten a lot of offers that I usually turn down. And the reason I'm here is this guy right here. He sent me video from the parade last year with these two guys. And I go, that looked like it was pretty fun. He goes, you got to go. And I go, well, let me think about it. And then I was like, and I was off, then I was on, I was off. And then they're like, you can bring your wife. And I'm like, oh, that helps sell it. And of course, I was even getting on the airplane to come here. I'm thinking, man, I got so much stuff to do around my house. I'm taking a whole weekend. But it's been really fun. It's been a great opportunity. But I wanted to close with this one thing. So I was asked, what do you think it is? And I've said this. I don't think we developed the technology. I'll just say that. And I asked my astrophysics prof once when I was in college, I asked her, I said, hey, do you believe in extraterrestrial life? And she said, no. Being the prodding kind of pain in the ass that I can be, I said, really? You don't believe? She goes, no. I go, it's an infinite universe. And as far as we know, we can't count them. There's billions and billions of known stars. And I know that because we would fly night vision goggles, which amplify light. And you turn all the lights down and go up at about 30,000 feet in the middle of the Pacific. Then roll your head back. You can see the entire Milky Way. It's spectacular. Just so you know, you can live through me, but it's incredible. You can actually see satellites going over. You can see them moving. So you sit back there and you look at all that and you go, if we're the only thing, this is it, Earth, it's pretty lonely. I just want you to think about that. It'd be like you being the only person on the planet. It's a lot of space going to waste. So just put that in your, I'm not going to talk little green man or any of that stuff. I'm just saying there's a lot out there that we don't know. We can't understand. We can't explain dark energy. We can't explain dark matter. Physicists will admit that. So just take that. We still have a lot to learn. We are just finishing proving some of Einstein's theories, like proof that we can actually see gravity waves, and the stuff that just came out of the black hole. So there's a lot out there. just keep that in your hip pocket as you all walk out. When people question, do you? It's, you know, if we're going to be open-minded, let's think that we're not all that. Let's check our hubris, and go, maybe there's some other stuff out there.
Thank you to David Fravor and 25 years of UFO speakers, from the very first with Bruce Maccabee and all who followed. Next week on the B-side, we'll present another recording from the archives. You'll hear a fascinating story of alien abduction. Alien contact investigator Kathleen Marden discusses evidence, what makes a credible witness, and details the vivid experience of 2 abductees. Tune in to our next episode and decide for yourself what really happened. Hope to see you this year at McMenamins' 25th Annual UFO Festival, May 16th and 17th at Hotel Oregon in McMinnville. I'm Shannon McMenamin. Thanks for listening to the Red Shed Tapes B-side.
The Red Shed Tapes B-side is written and produced by McMenamins and Gretchen Kilby. Sound editing by Gretchen Kilby. Writing by Michelle Jake Robbins. McMenamins' production team includes Kat Nyberg, Michelle Jake Robbins, and Renee Rank Ignacio. UFO Fest AV engineer is Rand Deal. UFO Fest archival audio and video by Kat Nyberg and J.D. Brenizer. Our podcast theme music was composed by Jim Brunberg and Ben Landsberg at Wonderly. Podcast artwork is by Lillian Ripley. You can get in touch with us here at the Red Shed Tapes by emailing podcast@mcmenamins.com. The complete version of the presentation you heard today is available on YouTube. Learn more about McMenamins UFO Festival at ufofest.com.